Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures with Aggie, brought to you by the Ryan Martin Foundation. Today we have our first episode of a long, awesome series featuring Per4Max. Per4Max is a custom wheelchair company that works specifically with wheelchair basketball players on Team USA. Today, our first episode features Willie Hernandez. He's the founder and CEO of Per4Max, and he's going to walk us through his story and give us background on Per4Max as a company and all the awesome developments that they have coming up in the next year. Please welcome Willie. William, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited to share your story and the story of Per4Max. But first, could you kind of just give us some background on who you are and what you do?
Okay. Well, I was pretty much the founder of Per4Max Medical. Pretty much how it started out was I, as an athlete, of course, I experienced many other products that were out there, and I felt like there was some improvement that needed to be done. Most of the chairs that were being produced at the time were very cookie cutting kind of products, and it was one size fits all kind of thing. And I felt like the sport was getting to the point where it needed to be tailored to those individuals depending on what their disability and their capabilities out there on the market. So I felt like Per4Max was the answer to that, and being able to at least tailor just like a suit, right, to that particular individual. So I got my degree in mechanical engineering out of the University of Texas at Arlington. There, pretty much, I was offered a full ride to play wheelchair basketball by Jim Hayes. Jim Hayes, as a matter of fact, was our initial coach out there that started the program at UTA. And of course, with that, I was able to get my degree in mechanical engineering. And of course, thus, Per4Max came about through that.
That's awesome. I love it. So I guess, how far back does your wheelchair basketball go? When did you realize that this was going to be your sport? This is what you wanted to do?
No, it's very interesting just because I came from Central America initially at the age of 6. And I was brought by my mother and my 2 other brothers that we ended up being raised in Southern California. And in Southern California, pretty much we learned, the language initially in elementary school, going through the whole bit as an immigrant. Of course, by the time I was in the 5th or 6th grade, I had heard about wheelchair basketball. I knew nothing about it. But of course, I loved sports, and the only way I played it was with my crutches. I used to use crutches. And I would dribble the ball. I would grab one crutch and drop the other, and then dribble around with one hand. And all of a sudden, somebody, I think, alerted one of the coaches at Whitney High School. It was Whitney Junior High and high school at the time. Anyhow, coach, it was Les Hayes, came to school at, I think, around my final year, I guess 6th grade at the time. Nowadays, of course, it's 5th grade, but 6th grade at the time. And said, hey, who wants to play wheelchair basketball? And of course, I was like, wow, who's this guy, right? And he started talking about wheelchair basketball, and I was just like, he didn't even have a demo video or anything like that. And so I felt like, he captivated me somehow to this game. And later that day, we all, of course, in class, grabbed some chairs that were sitting around, because Salvin Elementary School, which is the school that I attended, was a specialty school. It was almost like a mixture of regular kids, of course, and those with disabilities. And of course, they had chairs laying around in the halls. And so we grabbed these chairs and we took them out and we started playing so-called wheelchair basketball. We didn't know the rules, but there we were. So anyways, when I went back home, I told my mother, I said, I want to go to Whitney, because that's the school that they have wheelchair basketball. I'm looking nowhere else. And sure enough, I ended up going to Whitney Junior High, and I attended the school where I pretty much was coached by Les Hayes. And of course, I was not introduced just to wheelchair basketball. I was introduced to many adaptive sports. You're talking about tennis, track, and all assortment of adaptive sports during the time. And so I was growing up with many introductions to many of the sports that we introduced during that time. Even Brad Parks, which introduced wheelchair tennis during that era, it was just becoming very popular during the time. Anyhow, so wheelchair basketball really just got my attention. And throughout the years there, pretty much I excelled just because we used to compete against the women's wheelchair basketball team and the men's, like it was a high school team at the time. And we're a bunch of juniors. Of course, we would get our butts whooped every time, but we were learning, right? We would even do exhibitions at high schools. And of course, we're supposed to be teaching them how to play wheelchair basketball. Where I'm, over here learning, right? But anyhow, and so just I excelled in some of these sports. And by the time I graduated from Whitney at 9th grade, I ended up mainstreaming to Fairfax High School, where I felt like I was going to lose that connection to wheelchair sports. But fortunately, Les Hayes decided to take a job working at Fairfax High School, so he was actually still coaching us throughout that, and then we would return to coach. To train during the week to play wheelchair basketball. So, anyways, lo and behold, through times there was many other teammates that came along the way, like Jesus Alamillo, which was ended up becoming my roommate at UTA. He excelled as well, and so we became a really good group, and we ended up winning a few national championships as juniors. And so all of a sudden, we're getting to be seen by different coaches out there. University of Illinois, Brad Hedrick, as a matter of fact, was interested in me coming to their university at the time. I attended 2 summer camps at the University of Illinois. Unfortunately, they were giving out half scholarships at the time, and my mom could not afford that. And of course, there's this full scholarship that's being offered, and the person that came up to me and told me about it was Stephen Welch. Well-decorated individual as well in the tennis scene and basketball. Anyhow, so he came up to me at a track meet. We were at a track meet. It was a juniors nationals track meet, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, coach wants to talk to you. He's offering a full ride. He's just starting the program at University of Texas Arlington. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not sure. Let me ask my mom and so and so and whatnot." So, anyways, so I ended up saying yes. And then, of course, he gives me a phone call, and he said, "Son, you're ready to come to Texas." I wasn't even sure what University of Texas Arlington was. I had heard about UT Austin. I've heard of all these different other universities, but not Arlington, right? Arlington was a little bit smaller, but I was still excited. And so I ended up being the full ride scholarship to University of Texas Arlington. But at the same time, I was kind of fearful. So I had asked coach, and I said, "Hey, there's another individual that was my teammate, Jesus Alamillo. Would you have some room for him?" And he was like, "Well, let me see, son." And sure enough, he calls me up and he goes, "Yeah, let him know, call me up." And here he comes, right? So Jesus Alamillo came on board, and the rest was history with that. And so the first year, of course, was a tough year. Thought we were going to win a national championship. Of course, we fell short. Jesus Alamillo and I fell out of the game, and of course, fell short of that in the semifinals. And then we lost, pretty much the hopes of ever even winning that first national championship. Of course, the following year, Stephen Welch comes on board because he had only one more year in high school during the time that I had been already once there in my sophomore year in college. Comes on board. And then Jason Van Beek is another individual who comes on board from California. And of course, here we are. And we got a national championship team and a national championship caliber team. And we win a national championship that second year we are on board, third year and fourth. And of course, 3 national championships, at the University of Texas Arlington. And so that was, just a fantastic start. And of course, at the same time, getting my degree in mechanical engineering, tough, but yet at the same time, just putting my head down and getting into the grind things, So, but anyways.
That's an awesome rundown. That's so many things led
I
to
know.
where we are now.
Yeah.
I love that. I guess I guess a follow-up, when did it stick? Like at what moment did you know like, oh, I'm good at this? Like this is what I think I should do.
You know, it was very interesting, just because when I was in high school, I used to play tennis as well. I love tennis. To this day, I still love tennis. So I used to go out and push over a mile just to get to the tennis courts in hopes to find someone to hit with. And of course, if there was no one there, I would just hit the wall and for hours. And then if I would find somebody, it's like, hey, I'll call them out and go, hey, come on over. Well, so what I'm saying is that I always gravitated to sports, whether it was tennis or basketball. I always found some fascination to being able to do it well, to the point where I didn't see it as a competition to go against others. I saw it more like, I felt like it was satisfying this itch within me that I was capable of doing something different, just because my brothers were able to walk, right? And so I always wanted to be better than them, right? And so arm wrestling, I wanted to be the stronger one, you know? And if they were skateboarding, I was not going to stop from getting on a skateboard and pushing with my hands and doing stuff like that, you know? And so I was always trying to get up on anyone, right, that was competing or doing whatever against me. And so in terms of wheelchair basketball, it called me just because of the camaraderie, and I could also share also the fact that, okay, I'm disabled. I got polio when I was 3 months old, and so I could share some of the stories and some of the struggles that they were going through. But it was not like we were, talking about woe is me, life is not going good because of these disabilities. No, it was more like sharing a common love towards a sport and where we were headed, in our future. Yes, I always worried about my future, even when I would sit there at home in the middle of the night thinking about, what am I going to do for college? What am I going to do, for this and that? And so definitely there was always that at a young age that I was always worried about. But definitely I always felt that I could do something with it, but I never thought that it would lead me to get a full scholarship at a university. I definitely didn't, because at the time I was thinking USC. I want to go to USC, University of Southern California, because everyone goes there, or UCLA, some other individuals. Of course, myself, I was a big fan of USC. And so that was my train of thought at the time, just being able to do that as opposed to becoming a wheelchair basketball player. And now the things that have opened up for many of the individuals that are doing adaptive sports all over the world is just fantastic.
Definitely. So where did Per4Max come about? Was that the goal? I don't know. I don't know.
No. That's interesting. That's very interesting because, okay, so I named off a few individuals like Jesus Salamillo. Fung Tran was another individual that came on board and became a member of the Wheelchair Moving Mass. Shay Mack was another individual as well. We were all wannabe engineers at the time. And so we were sitting, I was doing my English paper at the time, I remember, and one of the guys ended up receiving his chair from a manufacturer during the time that had delivered his chair, and he was kind of a little bit disturbed that the chair was not to the dimensions that he wanted, right? And we all of a sudden started pondering on the idea where, hey, why don't we just make our own chair? I mean, we've got to become engineers eventually, but we don't know how. It's just how, some way or another we're going to do it. And so Jesus, which was a year ahead of us at the time, his counselor, he mentioned to his counselor, which is Dr. Kugel at the time, he was offering his assistance to us. And so 4 of us, which Per4Max, that's where it comes from. Performance to the max is how we kind of, it's actually from a Pennzoil commercial during the time. And so, of course, the 4 is what we added in there. Of course, they wouldn't spell it with the, with a F, with a 4, it was an FOR right in between, but we added the 4, so Per4Max. And so anyhow, so we would meet up with Dr. Kugel once in a while and talk about this ultimate sports chair. And then, of course, Dr. Kugel eventually started getting tired of us at these meetings because we weren't doing anything. And they said, you know what? I'm going to put you guys in an intensive course where you're going to do computer-aided design, and you're going to learn it. And this is where you can start designing and doing the proper way, how an engineer is supposed to do it. Where at the time, we're trying to clip out of English, history, and all these different other courses. We were just not even getting into engineering just yet. And so we had all these ideas. We took this course on Saturday, and it was just intense. And out of there, of course, we learned computer design, which was AutoCAD at the time. And this was just new during the time, just because a lot of the chairs were not even developed through computer design during the beginning. It was just everything, the old school, just drafting and just eyeing and doing things like that, which I didn't know that that's not how they were doing it. It's just we were new to it, but this is the way Dr. Kugel said, hey, this is how it needs to be done. And so we began to do that, and we began to just experiment with certain things here and there, yet not still developing anything. Got to my senior year, our senior project was a continuous variable transmission conical gearing on a wheelchair. And so we took the existing model of a chair that they were building at the time, but we added this contraption onto the chair, which to Dr. Kugel's standards, it was okay because we ended up getting a B, but yet because it wasn't the chair, right, that he was looking for. And so that ended up, pretty much my time at University of Texas Arlington. So it was still just an idea. I was still not doing anything about it. And of course, here comes a good buddy of mine, which was Raul Ortega. Raul Ortega and I actually hit it off. The reason why, just because Raul Ortega, he was from Mexico, and he was already making his chair. He had already had ideas, and he was already bending and doing all this welding. And he just learned it himself. He pretty much, from a child, I heard the stories that his mom, because he won't tell the stories, his mom just watching him out there, and he's over there welding, and he's just burning his eyes. He would go to bed at night, and his eyes are all like red. And so anyway, so him and I just hit it off because we were just intrigued with how we can change the product, how it's made today. And that was the kicker, right? Just being able to just better that product. And little by little, it just me helping him, I felt like, this is my side hobby, because I ended up taking a job in robotics after I graduated. And that's how I kind of got my feet wet in the engineering world. And so just learning computer design, but with SolidWorks now instead of AutoCAD. And so with that, it just allowed me to at least learn the ropes, learn from those that already been out there in the engineering world. And so I just began to just put things together a lot easier, as opposed to the theoretical way of doing things at the university, right? Where they teach you just everything's theory, but yet you're not applying much out there. And so so when I got together with Raul, I did an intern at least for about 2 months out there in Mexico, and I learned quite a bit of just wheelchair manufacturing, the way things were being done. And so I took it upon myself after, like, in 1998 and 99, I told them, hey, look, how about if we do this? I do it here in the United States, and you help me manufacture and weld and all that, since you already got started in Mexico. And so he said, sure. And then all of a sudden, a month later, he goes, I can't do it. And I'm like, really? And I said, why? And he's like, I just can't. And so we didn't do it. And I ended up holding the cards, and I said, whoa, what am I going to do now? So I said, well, I'm committed. I'm in. And I continued. I just put my head down. That year, we ended up sponsoring the NWBA, and brought a few chairs that cost me over $1,000 just for the guy that could weld the chairs together for me. And then I painted them and did all that just to present it. We sold only one chair that day. And then of course the whole year didn't go so well. So we lost a lot of money that first year. But what do you do, right? And so it's something that I believed in, and I did. I felt like I could, and so that the thing that I was doing at the same time was I wanted credibility, right? Because as an athlete, you want individuals to believe in your product, and the way I felt they were going to believe in me is by being part of the USA national team. I said, so I was trying out for the USA national team. So I ended up trying out, and I made it. I was able to make the Paralympic team for Sydney 2000, be representing the U.S. The top, the 12 individuals that were chosen, and I was one of them. And so that gave me some credibility, just because as an athlete, you were looked upon as an elite athlete amongst your peers, and that you know what you're doing, and that you know at least the product well enough to have that credibility to sell me on something, right? And eventually, little by little, people started listening and seeing that the things that we were doing were different, and that we were really customizing the product to each individual and whatever they were doing. Like for instance, a good example is like at the time just being able to put a double amputee in a chair that didn't have a footrest. Because most of these other chairs that were coming in, they had a footrest, and you're a double amputee. Well, when are you going to use the footrest, right? So stuff like that, that's simple, right? If you think about it, I mean, but at the same time, that's what was being done, just because everything was just a number. Individuals were treated as a number. And so we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be tailored every single individual and cater to their disability, cater to their style of play, and of course, as wheelchair basketball has positions. So you got center position, guard position, and then you got your class ones that play a certain position, which a lot of times are sitting at a lower position, and you're tailoring to their disability as well to be able to at least counteract their abilities and get the best out of them, right, in terms of the results. So anyways,
yeah, that's the story. That's an awesome story as to where we are, I guess, how you got there. But just a few more for you. Can you kind of tell us about who these athletes are that are using your chairs, and kind of just a bit about the community and these people?
Yeah, well, for instance, I can start out with Brian Bell, right? Brian Bell, I remember at the time I was playing a tennis tournament of all things. I wasn't even supposed to be at this tennis tournament. I got a wild card, and I ended up going to this tennis tournament in Lakeshore. And then Miles came up to me at the time. Miles was the head coach of the junior team out there at Lakeshore. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I've got this kid. He's going to be something in the future. I really think so. You should come and see this kid. And if you could provide him with the chair, it'd be fantastic for your product. And I think that you're not going to regret it." Sure enough, I went out there and I saw little Brian. He was running back and forth and with whatever he had. And of course, I ended up supplying him with the chair. And after that, the rest was history. He never looked back. And Brian, of course, just on his own, excelled. It became a fantastic player here in the United States and ended up going to Europe. And of course, as you can see, two gold medals now for the U.S. And it was just fantastic. Real quiet individual. He ended up going to the University of Illinois. And that's one thing that for us is I wanted to be able to change people's lives the way it changed my life. One reason why I come back to that story is because when I was a kid, I went to these camps that they used to hold. Brad Parks and a few other individuals at the time, they used to host this camp during spring break at Saddleback College in Southern California. And they would have this camp for about 5 days. And so it was adaptive sports and all the sorts of, you're talking about wheelchair basketball, tennis, and all these, and track and whatnot that was being conducted. And there were all the kids, were just having a good time, and sponsored by Yoplait, I think, yogurt and Gatorade and all these different other sponsors at the time. Anyways, at the end of the camp, they would always do this, the camper of the year. And so the camper of the year would get a wheelchair. And of course, this one year, I ended up getting the camper of the year. And so I was given a chair. And whoa, I was ecstatic. That was like the greatest thing on earth. As a matter of fact, I ended up using the chair so much that my mom got upset at me that said, "Hey, you're not even using your crutches anymore. What's going on? You leave that chair outside." Anyhow, so that was just the biggest smile in my life, that changed my life in the way I did things. And so that's why for me it's big, because like just being able to provide. Would Brian have been able to gotten a product eventually? Probably, but I don't know that, right? So I gave him that opportunity. So there's many individuals like that. Steve Serial, that was another individual that you hear name, very popular nowadays as well. No one knew his name other than he was just a good wheelchair basketball player for New York. And I came up to him and I offered him, support and being able to at least excel. And of course, he was going to be a fantastic player, but I just wanted to be there to be part of his journey. And there's, like I said, many other individuals along the way there that I think if we're able to at least assist them on their journey, and we've done something different and something impactful in their lives. And that's, I think for me, is very touching, just because it happened to me, and it's something to give back to some of these individuals that are out there, they're struggling, and being able to at least show that, hey, they are a person, not just a number in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You led into kind of my final section of questions here perfectly. You've already given advice, but if you could look back on your story and give younger William some advice going through this journey here of wheelchair basketball and Per4Max, what would you tell him?
Through the tough times, there's always good times. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Even those times when you just don't think that it's going to get any better, that things will always get better in the future. That I learned later, just because we all have a tendency to think that things, whether there's bad, there's no good. I feel that where there's bad, they're learning lessons. They're learning lessons, and that you have to learn in order to become good. And that's one thing that I have learned. It's like, if I wouldn't have learned from some of the mistakes that I made along the way, I don't think I would be here where I'm at now. So.
Definitely. That's great advice. I think younger William would appreciate it, but that's awesome. Okay, cool. I guess last question for you. If someone doesn't use one of your Per4Max chairs, why should they, and how can they find out more?
This is the one thing, I don't ever force individuals into our product. We offer our expertise. This is one thing that really I'd love to tell most individuals, and I know a lot of mothers and individuals that don't know who Per4Max is that we have a lot of knowledge, and we carry a lot of knowledge, and we offer our expertise to every individual out there. I've even found in the past where we have given advice to individuals and they end up getting a different product, and it's okay. It's just, the thing is, they take our advice, and that's what we have, is knowledge. And Per4Max is about family. We cater to every individual that we sell to, or we give our product to, and the reason why, just because we believe in our product, and it's important, because these are our legs, and these are our tools in order for us to excel in today's world, and whatever endeavors that you're getting into. So that's what we are. So Per4Max is about family, is how I would characterize it.
I love that. I've noticed that about the wheelchair basketball community in general. I think it is very family community oriented, which I love. And maybe that's why I love these interviews so much with the NWBA kind of series that we had as well. I could tell it was very family oriented. And you're a part of that family too. So that's super cool. But awesome. Well, William, this was great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and the Per4Max story. And I'll link below y'all's website and things so everybody can find you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Willie, thank you so very much for coming on the show and sharing your story as well as Per4Max's story. Join us for more episodes of Adventures with Aggie powered by Per4Max coming on Thursday featuring Jake Williams of Team USA.